So I'd like to talk about automation today, and in particular automation of supply chain data. And this is automation is a key thing in everything we do, and in particular in this industry, the supply chain is a key place where data is gathered and collected and integrated, but also lost and misplaced and mistaken or misunderstood. So if we look at the typical supply chain data problems, and these apply to lots of industries, but and we heard Rob talk about HS2 earlier. Typically, there are lots of organisations all in a network feeding data to each other, and you constantly have the problem of inconsistent data structure, inconsistent data quality, and it takes time to read the data and to use it and to adopt it. Therefore, you're achieving less value, or achieving value more slowly because you're not able to plan correctly and manage your assets correctly. And then there's slow feedback. So if it takes a long time to receive and ingest and understand the data, you then can't say to your data suppliers, oh, actually, this data is not quite right. There's something missing. Can you correct that? But because ultimately the data suppliers, they are not data organizations. They are building bridges, they're building roads, they're construction companies, and the data is something that helps them to do that, and therefore it's not at the forefront of their minds having to hand over the data at the end of the day, because having good data submitted is becoming more and more of a key performance indicator, a measure that suppliers are being asked to be held to, so that the data can be used for ongoing maintenance, for digital twins, as Miranda was saying. And it's also often hard to track these submissions. So if it's something coming along in someone's inbox, being integrated, or being manually processed, then that's hard to measure, to know, have you submitted this yet? And oh, actually, I submitted it last week. Oh, I didn't receive it. Oh, you've submitted the same thing twice. All of these things are tricky to manage, and automation can really help with those things. Also, it allows us to measure the supplier KPIs if we can track and automatically monitor and measure them. So we want to make it easier by automating. So automation is a key of what we do, and it makes life easier for all parties, for the receivers of the data who have to manage and maintain these assets, and also to the suppliers who are delivering the assets. So we need to make sure it meets required levels of quality. Have you submitted what you said you'd submit, and is it to a sufficient level? And a required level can be a subjective thing, so we want to turn that into an objective measure using automation and rules. And also a key thing we see is with data providers, giving them the ability to do a dry run, to say, just do a test submission on this data before you're ready, so that you can make sure over time, as you're collecting it, before you're ready to submit it, make sure that it's going to meet those standards when you submit it finally. And the other important thing is to be able to automatically do something with the data once it's received. So I've not just received it and I've not just checked it's okay. I can automatically integrate that into my existing data, replacing the things that were there already, and introducing the new things that have been added. And this all just helps to promote good practice. But ultimately what it means is the data is now much more quickly available to be used for planning, for analysis. We can see the things that have been built, we can make accurate assessments of them much more quickly if the data is automatically received and automatically processed. And so at One Spatial, we use One Data Gateway for this. This is our portal that sits on top of our rules engine for automatic processing. And that's both validation of the data, is it correct or not, but also adoption, integration of the data, automatically stitching it into your existing data stores. And what's key with this is you want it to be a simple way for suppliers to upload the data. You want to make it as frictionless as possible, so they simply upload and go. And so the thing that needs to be based on rules. So as a receiver of the data, you configure rules to check the data quality, and that happens then automatically across all your suppliers. Now, you often have lots of different suppliers and lots of different types of data that you're receiving through these supply chains. So you'll need to manage these projects, make sure the right organizations have access to it in a secure way. You want dashboards to be able to show you who submitted what and when, and what the data is like. But also you need to handle the natural variation in data. If you have something that's too strict, too rigid, it becomes an obstacle for the suppliers. You want something that can deal with the fact that someone's spreadsheet has a slightly different column name than someone else's, and be able to handle those inconsistent schemas of data automatically. So a key thing is that simplicity. So as a supplier, I can log in, I can see, right, these are the two types of data I need to submit. I'll select one, I'll upload it, and it will automatically handle it from there. And in theory, it's a fire and forget system. You upload your data, it's been accepted, great. You can then carry on with your day. But if it's not, then that's when we can produce reports telling us, well, here are the reasons why we cannot accept your data. So let's take a look at some of these flows that are happening. So in the happy path, the supplier submits their data, it gets validated, we get a validation report back, and if it's good enough, the data gets in, is automatically accepted and adopted and then stitched into the existing data. It might be that you have different types of rules. You might have mandatory rules. If the data does not meet these standards, it's not allowed in. But here are some advisory rules. We'll let the data in, but here are some things that you could improve next time. And so those validation results are useful even when the data has been accepted. And then there's the more serious path, which is, okay, the data is not accepted, it's not met my mandatory rules, and therefore I cannot accept it. And this validation report is telling you these are the things that you have to correct in order for the data to be accepted. So it gives the supplier all of the information they need to meet those requirements. It makes it black and white rather than something subjective. And also what we see is important is the ability to dry run this process. So as a supplier, I'm not ready to give it to you yet. It's not ready for submission. It's not complete, but I want to see how it's getting on. How is it if I submit this? Can I get a dry run of the validation results so that I can check that the data that I have collected that's not yet ready for submission is still of correct quality? So that's quite an important use case that we see. And what this means is, but the automation allows not just it easier for the supplier and receiver, but it also allows tracking of, well, where are the problems people are having? Which are the rules that are causing the most problems? Is that an indication that maybe something in the set of tools that are being used to collect the data is wrong or missing? Is there specific problems? So are certain suppliers having more problems than others? Are they meeting their submission demands? We've asked them to upload this every week. Are we getting something every week? And so you can track over time the quality of this data as it hopefully improves as suppliers are submitting it and they're improving their processes. We should be able to see that improvement of data over time. And actually that dashboard is useful not just during the supplier handover of the data, but actually the data managers, as the data lives through its life cycle, the assets are being used and maintained and used as digital twin representations. Those rules can keep being run just to make sure the data is not being degraded as the assets are managed and used and maintained. So the benefits of this are, we can now talk about standards. We can now explicitly say to users, these are the standards to which your data must meet. And we can publish those rules and we can show you them and we can even execute them. And it means we know for sure that when the data is received, it is as expected and as stated. And what it means is that those reports can help the suppliers understand the expectations on them and also produce corrective action. So I can know explicitly, these are the assets that are wrong and this is why they're wrong. And this is what I need to correct, for my data to be accepted, and that's all automated. And because it's a repeatable process, then that just makes everything downstream a lot more effective. We know that by the time the data is received, it is already good quality. It is already sufficient quality, and all the automated processes that run downstream from that will run a lot more smoothly because we've got a guarantee of the quality. We're not taking incorrect data and then causing problems in the downstream processes. It also means if the data has been automatically ingested and integrated in the systems, it is live immediately. Within seconds or minutes of the user uploading that data, it is available for decision making and for planning purposes and for modeling. And the benefits of automating this and recording the information about the supplies means that we can produce these dashboards. We can track the KPIs of suppliers, ensure that they're meeting their the standards that they've been asked to meet. And we can see that the customers that are using this process, ultimately what it means it's quicker, it's less costly, and it's more efficient. And it means that the data is no longer accurate once a year when we decide to clean it up. It's always ready for use and always ready to be used for the planning, for the maintenance, and for the analysis. Okay, thank you. That's the end of my presentation.